on this computer. Good evening, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
Great, Jerzee Joe. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. You have a good Thanksgiving?
I did. How about you?
I did, thanks. Stayed home, tried to stay off the roads. And did you travel?
I did. I
No,
traveled to your fun blue state.
my fun blue state. And how was New Jersey? You didn't try to bring your gun with you, did you?
No, I'm smarter than that.
Yes, if you don't live in this state and you bring a gun with you, you're gonna be in big trouble. In fact, we're going to talk about guns, new gun laws today. That's going to be part of our uh, part of what we talk about today, including some really ridiculous gun laws the state of Oregon just passed. So let me give you a quick rundown of what we're going to try to cover. I doubt we're going to fit it all in, but by the way, so for the first time listeners, it's a situation with Jerzee Joe. It's news and perspective, either news that you may not have heard on TV, or if you did hear it, you may have only heard one side of the story. So we're going to tell you the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say. My quote of the day is going to be from a guy you never heard of, a guy named Lysander Spooner. You never heard of Lysander Spooner, did you?
Nope.
Well, we're going to talk about a quote of his on the logic of banning guns because some people misuse them, which will segue into new gun law that was passed in Oregon on November 8th and how that's screwing that state up. We'll talk about one of the stupidest lawsuits of the year regarding macaroni and cheese. We're going to talk about why the federal government is going to remove 4 electric-powered generating dams in Oregon. Hey, question, Sue, have you ever ridden the New York City subway system?
Several times.
When's the last time you rode it?
Probably about 10 years ago.
You think you're ever going to ride it again?
Not if the current conditions remain as is.
Well, that's a shame because you're helping to pay for it. And we'll talk about why you and everybody else who has either hasn't ridden it in 10 years and may never ride it again is still paying for the New York City subway system. We're going to talk about a seizure of 33 tons of cocaine. Offhand, do you have any sense of how much 33 tons of cocaine would look like if you had it in a big pile?
I want to say it's about 2 tractor trailer loads.
Very, very good. That's almost exactly what it is. And we'll talk about where it was seized. We're going to talk about, did you hear about Biden allowing Chevron to begin pumping oil in Venezuela?
No, I did not hear that.
Yes, he said last week to Chevron, you can go down to Venezuela and start pumping their oil. And we're going to talk about who the biggest beneficiary of that is. If time allows, I think last week I said I was going to talk about check washing and online shopping scams, but I don't think we ever got to that, did we?
I don't recall that we did.
All right. And our taxpayer relief shot this week is going to be about a convenience store clerk in Bay Point, California, who was confronted by 2 armed robbers. And when the smoke cleared, one of them was dead on the floor. Anyway, so let's talk about Lysander Spooner. The reason you probably never heard of him, he died in 1887. He was an American essayist, a lawyer, and an abolitionist. He died in 1887. And here is his quote on guns. And remember, this is back in 1887, and this is back when, like, the city of Boston was passing these laws, like you can't have a gun in the city limits of Boston. And this is, in the 1880s. And here is his quote: "To ban guns because criminals use them is to tell the law-abiding that their rights and liberties depend not on their own conduct, but on the conduct of the guilty and the lawless." And stop and think about that. Isn't that exactly what it says? Because some people misuse guns, we're going to penalize the law-abiding, and we're going to infringe upon your rights and liberties because the lawless don't follow the laws. And of course, those new restrictions, only the law-abiding will follow them. And I just think that's 100-year-old wisdom. Actually, it's 150-year-old wisdom. Would you agree or disagree with Lysander Spooner?
No, I absolutely agree. And that falls along the same lines as locks only keep honest people out.
That's right. Locks only keep honest people out. By the way, I got robbed one time. I was in a gym in Colorado, and I put my stuff and my clothes in a locker, put a lock on it, went to work out. This on a Saturday afternoon, came back, and my lock was gone, and my locker was open, and my wallet, my cell phone was gone. And on the video, a guy comes in with a backpack, pays his $7 guest fee, didn't have to show any ID, went into the locker room with his backpack, and then came out 7 minutes later. He had a bolt cutter in his backpack, and he took out his backpack, cut my lock off, and left with everything I owned, including my car keys, by the way.
I blame the gym. The gym is liable in that instance.
Yeah, and I said, look, you're letting people come in here just by paying a guest fee. They don't have to show an ID. You have no idea who they are. What if this guy had assaulted one of your female customers? So shortly after that, they did change it. If you're a guest and not a member, they did scan your license. But
it's also just good marketing too, so you can follow up with your prospective guests.
Exactly. Anyway, so that was closing the barn door after the horse got out. But yes, I was a victim of a guy with a bolt cutter. Anyway, Oregon. Anyway, the midterms were November 8th, and Oregon had a measure on the ballot. It was called Proposition 114. It was a whole host of new gun laws, including things like insurance and no high capacity magazines, which we refer to as standard capacity magazines. And you have to take a class. If you want to buy a gun, you have to get a license to buy a gun. But before you can get the license, you have to take a class on safe handling and operation of your gun. Now, think about this. If you don't have the gun, how are you going to take a class which is supposed to show you how to operate your gun and take your gun apart and clean your gun? If you don't have the gun you're taking the class on. Anyway, the legislature, in their wisdom, after the proposition passed on November 8th, they decided to make the effective date December 8th, which is next week, 30 days. And these classes are supposed to be administered by your local police department. The local police department says, hey, we don't have the personnel, the curriculum, the materials, even the classroom space to conduct this training. So effective, next Wednesday, which is next Thursday, a week from Thursday, December 8th, you won't be able to buy a gun in Oregon, because to buy the gun, you have to get a license. But to get the license, you have to take a class. And all the police departments are saying, we're not ready or prepared or able to conduct these classes. So, by the way, you can only guess what's happening this week. Anybody who was thinking about buying a gun ever is converging on gun stores, and they're literally wiping the shelves. The gun stores, after the shelves are bare in the gun stores. The gun stores are having their best week in their history. But this is one of these things where politicians have said, yeah, we're going to enact this law, and you got to get a license, you got to take the class, but you can't take the class, therefore you can't get the license. It's kind of a catch-22. And I'm sure they're thrilled that it's working out that way. You can bet there's going to be challenges, because imposing on somebody the requirement to take a class to exercise a constitutional right, I guess these politicians don't understand the definition of the word infringe, because in my opinion, telling me I have to take a class and pass a test to exercise a constitutional right, to me, that's the very definition of infringement. Would you agree or disagree?
Absolutely. And you're right, it's a huge catch-22.
Right. So, but anyway, as of until the smoke clears from these lawsuits, unless one of these, they can convince a judge, unless some of the plaintiffs can convince a judge to issue a temporary restraining order, an injunction against enforcement of the law, as of next Thursday, you won't be able to buy a gun in Oregon for the foreseeable future. Anyway, let's move on to the dumbest lawsuit I've heard in a long, long time. Kraft bought Velveeta, and you can buy Velveeta mac and cheese. It comes in a little cup. You peel the top off, you add some water, and you put it in the microwave. And on the package, it says, ready in 3.5 minutes. Well, some woman teamed up with some lawyer to file a class action suit. They're suing Kraft over the advertising on the cup that says ready in 3.5 minutes. And her name is Patricia Ramirez, and her attorneys argue this number doesn't account for the other 4 steps required to prepare the meal: removing the lid, the sauce pouch, and adding water. And so here's what they're quote. They're saying the 4 steps of removing the lid and the sauce pouch, adding the sauce pouch, by the way, is powder, adding the water and stirring These additional steps means it's impossible for the mac and cheese to be ready in just 3.5 minutes. Now, what does it take to pull the lid off, add the water, and stir in the powder? 30 seconds?
Maximum 30 seconds.
So they're suing over the additional 30 seconds, claiming that it's false and misleading advertising. They're looking for $5 million over false and misleading advertising.
I certainly hope a judge laughs and throws this away.
I hope, there is something, by the way, there's something called malicious prosecution, and defendants can be awarded attorney fees if it's frivolous. And I would certainly hope that not only does the judge throw it out, that he awards Kraft punitive damages for frivolous lawsuit. But oh my goodness, I mean, yes, you got to peel the lid, add 4 ounces of water, and stir in the powder, and then stick it in the microwave for 3.5 minutes. So it's actually 4 minutes. Ugh, just drives me crazy. So let's move on to the New York City subway system that you haven't ridden in 10 years, and I probably haven't ridden in 20, and probably have no plans to ride it again in my life. So let's talk about how you're paying for it. You probably didn't know you were paying for the New York City subway system, did you?
No, I didn't know I was. I mean, other than the fare that I pay to ride it, which is, a couple bucks.
Well, let me tell you how you're paying for it. So just like Amtrak, which is another train system you've probably never ridden and loses more than $1 billion a year and is kept afloat by taxpayer subsidies, New York's MTA, Metropolitan Transit Authority, operates the New York City subway, and they've been running at a deficit far in excess of $1 billion a year for years now, and they're currently $40 billion in debt. And by the way, that deficit that they run doesn't include the salaries of the hundreds of New York City police officers that are assigned to subway platform duty. It is most major New York City platforms have cops on the platform. That comes out of a separate budget. That's not part of the MTA's budget. Passenger fares used to cover only about 44%. Now they only cover about 32% of the operating costs. And so how are you participating in the funding? And here's a quote from the story today in the New York Post. A $15 billion cumulative infusion of federal cash over 2020 and 2021 temporarily secure the MTA's budget, but that will run out in 2024. So if you pay federal income taxes, you're indeed helping to pay for the New York City subway system. And how much you want to bet that when 2024 comes, if the Democrats are in control of the Congress and the White House, they'll extend that beyond 2024.
The added security, the added police officers that are patrolling, isn't that a New York City budgetary expense?
Yes, yes, but it's not part of the MTA. The MTA doesn't pay for it. The city of New York provides that police protection, but they don't charge the Metropolitan Transit Authority for it. So, if you look at the true cost of operating the subway systems, it's the $2 billion a year they're losing, plus the cost of all that armed security on most subway platforms. So, by the way, you figure a cop, with benefits cost you roughly $100,000 per year per cop. So every 10 cops is $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got 200 cops, that's $20 million a year in additional cost to provide police protection. So again, if you're paying federal income taxes, you're indeed helping to pay for the New York City subway system. And of course, as I mentioned, right now, fares they collect only cover 32% of the operating costs. So if federal funding runs out and they start to fund the deficit out of their general funds, if you're a resident of New York City, you pay New York City income taxes, New York City property taxes, New York City sales tax. If you live in New York City, you will pay for the subway, even though you've never used it. So,
and it's unfortunate that they need so many more officers with the state of crime going on in New York City right now.
Right. And of course, by the way, the one place, the Supreme Court told New York, you can no longer say no to people who want a concealed carry permit. But of course, one of the highest crime areas and one of the places that New York City said, well, you can't, if we give you this concealed carry permit, one of the places you can't take your gun, of course, is on the subway. So,
which is the place you need it the most.
The place you need it the most is the place you can't have it. All right, moving right along. If you had to guess, so what would you think is the absolute cleanest source of electric power in this country?
Cleanest
Cleanest.
solar, maybe?
No, well,
Wind?
there's no even cleaner than solar because there's a lot of manufacturing residue and everything else from solar. A lot
Water?
of waste when you get done, when the solar panels reach there, you got to bury them in a landfill.
Hydro?
Hydro.
Hydro.
There is no cleaner power source than hydro. And hydro, of course, comes when you have water flowing from uphill to downhill. And as it flows down, there's a lot of kinetic energy. And so what you do is you put up a dam and you let the water back up, and then you let it come down through the insides of the dam through water turbines at the bottom of the dam. And the water, as it cascades out the bottom of the dam, spins those water turbines and produces hydropower. You've been to the Hoover Dam, I believe, out near Las Vegas,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you got the lake on the one side is up 350 feet, above the outlet, which is down below. If you look down, it's more than a football field down, and that stored kinetic energy as it's released down through the pipes into those water turbines, spins the turbines, and that's where you generate the power from. Well, the Calumet River in Oregon comes down on the mountains, and it starts out, almost 1,000 feet above sea level, and eventually winds its way down, and it makes its way out to the Pacific Ocean. But every couple of miles along the Klamath River, they put in dams, and each dam has a power turbine, a water turbine, which generates nice clean power. And there's actually 4 of those dams. It's actually a dam system, generates enormous amounts of clean power. And one of the things they do, by the way, yes, salmon do spawn in the Klamath River, but do you know what a fish ladder is?
Is it a ladder for the salmon to climb back up over the dam?
Well, it's actually kind of like it almost looks like a series of shallow steps. And what they do is next to the dam, they take a little bit of the river and they let it come down, and they run it down these long, gently sloping steps. So the salmon can swim up. They call it a fish ladder. And the salmon can actually, you've seen salmon jump as they're going upstream. And the salmon jump up, they swim up the fish ladder and they make it up the river to their spawning grounds. Well, there was environmentalists, no, we're losing, not all the fish can make it. We lose some of the fish, can't make it up the fish ladder. So in response to protests by some environmental groups, FERC, the Federal Energy Resource Commission, has agreed to demolish the 4 dams on the Klamath River so that the salmon can have an easier time swimming upstream to spawn.
So
And
are
I'm
these active hydro generating
They're
dams?
active, hydro, clean, generating millions of kilowatt hours of energy every year. They're going to destroy all 4 dams so that the salmon can have an easier time swimming upriver to spawn. It blows my mind. And God only knows what they're going to replace them with. By the way, people say, oh, it's wind and solar. When this snowed in Buffalo for 3 days, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, they have
and by
no
the way,
solar
there was not a
power
lot
right
of wind.
now.
It was like just a steady, there was no sun and no meaningful wind. How much solar and wind power you think they had in Buffalo for 3 days?
0.
And if you had
Minimal.
solar panels, they had 5 feet of snow. How much power do you think you came out of those solar panels following that 5 feet of snow in the days
0.
after 0? And here's one other thing. Solar panels, when you have direct overhead sunlight, by the way, sunlight has about 100 watts per square foot of power. The best solar panels can only convert 15 watts to solar power, and that's when the sun's directly overhead. Now, in the summertime, the sun is almost directly overhead. In the wintertime, the sun rises in the east, but it rises in the southeast, and it's a very low angle. The sun is never overhead in the wintertime. The sun rises in the southern sky, it rises in the east, but in the southeastern sky, makes a loop across the southern sky and sets in the southwestern sky. You don't have that direct overhead sun. And in fact, when you're up in areas like Syracuse and Buffalo, where they get what's called lake effect, when it's not snowing, you get clouds. There's very little direct sunlight available up around the Great Lakes. So even when the sun is shining, you're hardly getting any useful solar power out of it. So this thing about replacing hydro and fossil with solar, and that may work in Phoenix. It's never going to work in places like upstate New York and Cleveland and Minnesota. You just don't have the sun. You just don't have the sun there. All right, 33 tons of cocaine. European police authorities in a multi-country coordinated effort, they took down a drug ring and seized 33 tons, which is 66,000 pounds of cocaine. And so you nailed it almost right on the head. A standard tractor trailer can hold about 20 tons. So picture one tractor trailer filled floor to ceiling with cocaine and a second one half full following right behind it. And that, by the way, was not a year's supply, not 6 months. That was probably just a few weeks supply. So it's kind of staggering the amount of drugs being smuggled into Europe every month, because that clearly was maybe a couple of weeks worth of supply. All right. How much time we got left?
Yeah, you got about a good 10 minutes or so.
All right. Well, so by the way, Venezuela, because they ran out of money and half their oil wells weren't working because they didn't have the money to keep them repaired and pumping. So Biden, in order to help global oil production, because oil is a global commodity. It doesn't matter where it's pumped from. Oil's fungible. It doesn't matter if you pump it in Venezuela, pump it in the US, pump it in Mexico. It all goes into one big pot, if you will. So the bigger the global supply, the lower the price. So Putin said to Chevron, okay, we'll give you a waiver and we'll let you start pumping oil from the Venezuelans. But you know who's going to be the biggest beneficiary of that pumped oil?
The oil companies?
No, Vladimir Putin. A couple of years ago, Russia loaned Venezuela $4 billion, and that loan was secured by Venezuela's oil resources. Starting next year, Venezuela has to start making loan payments of $635 million per year to Russia starting January of next year. They didn't have the money to do it, but now that they're going to let Chevron pump oil, Chevron will be paying Venezuela the money, which they will turn right around and send to Vladimir Putin. So I don't know if Biden realized that, but he'll be sending Vladimir Putin $635 million a year starting next year. So how about that one? No comment. Are you still there?
I was curious if Venezuela was a NATO country, and I don't believe that they are.
No, they are not. Absolutely not. Yeah, because they're not part of North Atlantic. All right. Let's talk about check washing online shopping scams. I'd heard about check washing where, and what I'd read, it says, if you write your checks in ballpoint pen, it's easy with a little nail polish remover, which is basically acetone, to erase whatever was written on the check and replace with what you want. But it doesn't work with gel pens. Well, I was skeptical. So I took a piece of paper and I took a ballpoint pen and I wrote, this is a ballpoint pen. And then right below it, I wrote, this is in a different gel pen. I said, this is a gel pen. Then I took a cotton ball and some nail polish remover, and I started rubbing. And guess what? In about 15 seconds, I had completely erased the words, this is a ballpoint pen. I mean,
Really?
gone, like it was never there. And the gel pen didn't phase it at all. It was still there. And what they actually do, they actually take like a little tray and they actually fill it, and they literally wash the check through the acetone or through the nail polish remover. And what they do, so if you if you have the mailman picks up your mail from your mailbox, you have a little flag on your mailbox. What they do is they go by late at night or early morning, and they look for flags on mailboxes, and they take the mail out. And if there's a check in there, they open it up and they wash it and they change the name of who it's paid to and they change the amount. So first of all, don't put your mail out the night before. And if you're going to write checks, make sure you use a gel pen. Don't use a ballpoint pen, because it is amazingly easy with the little nail polish remover to just erase whatever you wrote in a ballpoint pen.
Well, I do post my bills online nowadays.
Which is the smarter way to do it. But for those of you who still write checks the old-fashioned way, again, don't use a ballpoint pen, use a gel pen. Now, other scams too good to be true. Online shopping. If you get something that says Kohl's 30% off your purchase, or Target or Nordstrom's, whatever, And you'll see this thing, special for our store credit card members only. Click here to download your coupon. And then you'll click and then say, this offer is only for our store credit card customers. Like, if you have a Kohl's credit card, please enter your Kohl's credit card information. And then and you'll do that. And then you'll click and then they'll, congratulations, Sue Smith, here's your 30% off coupon. Well, what you just did is you just gave your credit card information to a scammer. There is no 30% off coupon. They just did that to get you to enter your name, your address, and your store credit card number. They now have everything they need to do online shopping with your credit card. So if you get an offer for 30% off for our store members only, don't click on it. It's too good to be true. And on that same topic, too good to be true, here's the other one that's prevalent this time of year. If you see, iPhone 14, $399, Apple iWatch 8, $162, some Bose Bluetooth headsets, $39.99, Ray-Ban sunglasses, $23.66, and you say, wow, that's great, and you click on it, and you'll go to a website that shows all of these, it's a really professional website. You show all of these popular items, headsets, phone, iPhones, Apple Watches, really professionally done. And these deals are all fantastic deals. They're really too good to be true. And you click on one and yep, I'll buy here. So if you want to order your, iPhone 8, iPhone 14, enter your shipping address, boom, 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 your credit card number, your item will ship in 2 to 3 business days, et cetera, et cetera. Too good to be true. It's a fake site. It's a very well done fake site. And all they want is your credit card number. You'll never see and you might even get some from your credit card. You might even get an alert from your credit card company. Did you just authorize, $399 to so-and-so? And you'll say, yeah, because I just bought an iPhone 14 for $399. And you will approve the purchase. Because even if you get an alert from your credit, I don't know if you get those, but I get alerts on my phone from my Visa company, for any purchases.
Yeah.
And if you say yes, they'll let it go through. Well, guess what? You have just approved a fraudulent purchase. They will send the money. You'll never get your product. You'll never get your money. So if you see an ad for something that's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. Don't buy it. All right. So we're coming up on we're down to the end, right?
Yep, you got about 5 or so minutes left.
All right, so we're going to get to our taxpayer relief shot. And before I get to the one, I'm just going to, and I call them taxpayer relief shots because when a good guy with a gun shoots and kills a thug, or occasionally it's a good woman, that saves the taxpayers the cost of a jury trial, almost always a court-appointed attorney. If the guy's convicted, he's going to go to jail, which is going to cost you $80,000 a year. If he gets out on parole, then you got a probation officer and an ankle bracelet. It costs a lot of money to try a thug and send to jail. So here's what the sheriff of Santa Rosa County thinks about you shooting and killing thugs. Here we go.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully you'll save taxpayers money.
Again, I just love this guy.
If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully you'll save taxpayers money.
And I don't know what it is about Florida, but it's not just the sheriff of Santa Rosa County. Here's the
Yes, that if a looter breaks into your home, comes into your home while you're there to steal stuff, that you take your gun and you shoot him. You shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese.
And that was Grady Judge, the sheriff of Polk County, California, who wants you to shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese. So it's not just me. These are 2 sheriffs in Florida that are encouraging you to shoot the bad guys. Anyway, this one comes to us from Bay Point, California, where a convenience store clerk is confronted by 2 armed thugs who start to pistol whip him. I mean, you can't see the video. It'll be up on the website. But they're beating this guy. You can see his face. He's bloody, black eyes. He's got stitches in his face. And these 2 armed thugs start to beat the crap out of this poor convenience store clerk. And here we go.
The convenience store clerk who fought back when armed robbers came into his store.
And he managed to grab a gun and fire off a lethal shot. KPIX5 Susie Steinwell is live in Bay Point with the video that shows how it all happened. And Susie, we may want to warn our viewers, some may find it hard to watch.
It is disturbing video, Juliet, but it really does show you exactly what happened here last night. That's when two armed robbers came into the Cam's Market here looking for cash at the register. One got away, the other died just steps from where we're standing right now. And we talked to the clerk.
By the way, how many times have we seen two guys come in, one gets shot and the other one runs like hell? It's not like in the Marines where no man left behind. Have we ever seen where the other thug tries to drag his wounded buddy out of the way? Or does
Nope, it's everyone for themselves.
runs like hell? Here we go.
Who fought for his life. It all happened within a matter of seconds. You can see two masked robbers run into Cam's Market in Bay Point as the clerk is closing up for the night. One suspect hurdles over the counter, gun in hand, and pistol whips the clerk, knocking him to the ground. He grabs as much money as he can from the register. The clerk composes himself, and holding his bleeding head, he reaches for a handgun in a drawer next to the register. There's another struggle, but the clerk fires one shot as the suspects sprint out of the store. The attacker died just outside. His accomplice is still at large.
I was actually right here when it first started.
Mark Kasperwicz is the clerk you just saw in that video. He walked us through his harrowing experience and explains how he had the composure to grab the gun in the drawer.
Just instinct, I managed to get an arm free and instinct kicked in.
Mark is an Air Force veteran and a private security guard. He says he fired one single shot after he says he heard one of the suspects fire at him.
By instinct, I just raised the weapon up and fired one shot.
The sign inside says it all. Trespassers be warned. Violators will be shot. Survivors will be shot again. Mark is unemotional about what he describes as self-defense and says he feels lucky to have survived.
At this point, I'm just really thankful that I'm alive, my coworkers survived.
Mark describes this to us as a very clear case of self-defense. And coming up at 6, we talk with KPIX5 legal analyst Paul Henderson exactly how self-defense would apply to a case like this. Juliette.
Yeah, exactly. What is that line? Well, what are investigators saying at this point?
Well, we don't need to wait. I mean, there's no clearer case. If you're in a jury, you look at this guy. I mean, he's bleeding. The thug is beating him with the gun. He's on the floor, and the thug is beating the crap at him with the gun. The guy's bloody. His head is bleeding, and the thug fires his gun. And this clerk had the presence of mind to grab his own gun and shoot back. And by the way, so the bad guy that got shot winds up DRT. And Sue, what does DRT stand for?
Dead right there.
Dead right there. So, I always get a kick. Well, we're going to have to talk to our legal analyst to see if this is a justifiable use of self-defense. I mean, if you were in a jury, how long would it take you to decide that this was a justifiable use of self-defense?
Yeah, this shouldn't even make it to that point.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a travesty if they even press charges. But if they did, if I was in the jury room, I think it would take about 4 seconds. All in favor of acquittal, say aye, and I think it'd be over and done with.
And what state was that from again?
That's California, of course.
Yeah, of course. Is New Jersey a castle law state?
No, unfortunately, New Jersey is one of 2 states in the union that has a duty to retreat. Now, I've talked about this before. In 48 states, if you encounter somebody in your home at 2 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, it is assumed that your life, is in jeopardy, and you have the right to use deadly force against that intruder, even though they may not be currently attacking you. It's assumed that your life or the lives of your family are in danger. New Jersey is one of 2 states that has a duty to retreat, which means you can only shoot as a last resort, meaning if I hear something in my house and I go down the stairs and see somebody in my house at 2 a.m, I have to run back upstairs, close my bedroom door, grab a phone, call 911, and lock myself in the bedroom, hoping the police get there. And only if the guy comes through and breaks down my bathroom door can I then shoot as a last resort. That's duty to retreat. So hopefully you don't live in a duty to retreat state.
No, I live in a castle law state. So
Castle
let me
law,
guess
yeah.
The other state I'm guessing is probably California, or is it New York?
No, I don't think it's New York. It might be Oregon or California. I'd have to see what the other one is, but there's two states that are duty to retreat, and New Jersey, unfortunately, is one of them.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say it's California.
You could very well be right. I'm going to research that before we do our next one. Anyway, since we're almost out of time, Sue, you got anything you'd like to add?
Nope. I just hope everybody had a safe and happy holiday.
Same here. And for those listening, I want to thank all of you who took the time to listen to this podcast, for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about things I find of interest and importance. Hopefully you learned something today. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com, Jerzee being spelled Jerzee, Jerzee, jerzeejoe.com. If you want to email me with a comment, question, or suggested topic, you can do that by just sending me an email to joe@jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jerzee Joe with a Z-E-E. And with that, I'm done unless you have anything else. Otherwise, I'll see you next week, Sue.
Nope. See you next week, Jerzee Joe.
All right, take care, guys. Be good. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.